Hi. So in today's video, I'll be telling you about my adventure with hair growing on my face, and I'll be telling you more about Yvette and the system. So that's the next section of my book, Piglet, the section entitled Titanic. And if that's something for you, if you're curious about the further events from Piglet, then stay tuned and off we go. So, um, Miss Halinka, Miss, just, just, okay, I'm sorry. I was just fixing my hair, as you noticed. So, Miss Halinka is, I think she's Jewish. So, I started to go to her because I started to grow hair on my face, which is a longer story with, having hormonal imbalance, of which I didn't even know about. But Miss Halinka was like, you better do some checkups. So I was growing hair, some white type of hair on the area of cheeks, and then there was one or two a little bit thicker and darker hair on my chin, and then in the areas of close to ear, I had longer hair space and here too, so that was really annoying because that really changed the shape of my face. I was just also looking for something over here, but maybe not, there was something there too, but um, so for me that was the end of the world. And so when I just learned that it was possible to remove hair from your face, then I felt relieved. But whenever I talked to Miss Halinka about it, it was like she was like she couldn't. She would always tell me, when I wanted to have all of them removed, she would always tell me that she can't remove all of them because it's a natural, thing to have some white, smaller hair on your cheeks, cheekbones. And I was like, no, you've got to remove all of them. And she was, no, I can't. And there was one more thing over here, and I still have some leftovers over that. So this part on the neck we did with the, laser with the special light. So it was a different technique, whereas here on the cheekbones, she would use different techniques with the needle. So she would go after every hair separately. So that was really time consuming, but I was happy it was possible at all. And I even told her that I looked like a werewolf. Yeah, and the story of my hair is a longer hair connected with, possibly with the sculpture that was made of me, that's in which I looked much older. Possibly it was, connected with even with, a woman who attacked me and during the day, and she tried to pose. She just attacked me with my hair. She didn't try to, fight me like a man, but she would just, approach me from the back and pull my hair from this side. Um, so the story with her it's a much longer story, with growing them in the wrong places and then losing them in the wrong places, because I was also losing a lot of hair when it comes to hair growing on my head, and I was growing hair a little bit of hair too, because I cut my hair on my hand and they grew bigger. But I did that when I was a little girl. And then I shaved my legs in the wrong place because nobody told me where to shave my legs. And then I was told that I shaved my ass. So I shaved too much of the legs. So you shave your legs only on the area of the calf, and I didn't know. And I did that the entire leg. And voila, and then I had those, little hair, and it was really annoying for me. Yeah. So with Miss Halinka, I started to have like, those thoughts like, I discovered your mystery, like you're Jewish, And then all of a sudden, when I had this thought and I had this, very stupid smile on my face, then when I bent my knees to tie my laces, all of a sudden I had different thoughts. Like I was in a different, mood. I had different thoughts, so I didn't have that particular thought. And then when I got back to the position when I had that thought, that I discovered her mystery, then it got back, which tells me that this is part of the way that hypnosis works. Is also there's some energy focused on you, and it's focused on the place where you are in. So I also remember saying something that was really unlike me, like, that Jewish people don't assimilate with us. This is what I said, but, I wanted to say that I didn't see Jewish people in Tarnów, because that is the truth. And if they assimilate or not, I honestly had no information at that time. Because most of the time, people I came across, I just didn't know if I was approached by a Jewish person or not. Most of the time, I was approached by the gypsy, and whenever I looked at the gypsy or Jewish, I thought they were Polish. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. And I have to tell you that, I always felt really pretty much open to and curious about other cultures. So my meeting with Jewish people, when I knew they were Jewish people, was really like curiosity, and I had this thought about Holocaust, and I'm sorry about it, right? So so you can't. What I want to tell you here is that the way I know it's not my thought process is because if to want somebody to change, to assimilate, first you have to know them, and you have to know what is the thing that's disturbing to you in them. And if I read about indigenous people and funny names like Skóra ze Starego Szałasu, Thomas Berger is probably not the best example of the book, but if there is a practice described where, in a key moment, the battle is happening and they are dancing in a ritual, then that's for me is intriguing. It's interesting. Like the same like tribes in Africa and the way they live their lives in a collective way too. That can be intriguing. So I think, the meeting with Jewish people really tells me like what was my real response to them, not just those thoughts that I had in front of Miss Halinka, but Miss Halinka had really fast response, and I don't know, it was maybe with just another meeting that we had. It was, I left her office, and when leaving her office, I had to hear that, you should make some medical checkups for hormonal imbalance, for parasites, for all sorts of things that just sounded bad, that you need to check for parasites, and you can't have the youthful procedure. I was aging. I not only had that hair growing on my face, but I was fatter, I had a bigger face, and I had a lot of issues with aging at that time. So I really wanted that procedure badly, and she refused me. And when doing that, basically there was a lady who worked with me in Britannia School of English, and that lady was a gypsy lady, very much pretty similar to somebody who married into my family. I mean, to women from his family. And then, that gypsy lady, when we had a cigarette together before a lesson, she would tell me that she looked good. And, I just looked at her and I thought that she didn't. And I never said that. I never wanted to offend a woman. or anyone. So it's not that I said something like that, but just, I had this thought that she didn't. And she changed what she said into, oh, I look as good as I can. And therefore I started to think, oh, I saw her at the beautician and she could have the procedure and I couldn't. So yes, I agreed. Yeah, she could look as good as she could. Which, the entire conversation seems to be just unnecessary. If you mean to just offend someone or point out to someone that, oh, I heard you're the beautician, you might have fungus, you might have parasites, hormonal imbalance, and you can't have a rejuvenating procedure. Yeah, okay. So, but other than that, I have to tell you that my beautician really, she really rescued me. And what I think is that if I crossed the line and if I started to do those rejuvenating procedures, then I would keep coming back for those procedures, and I would be dependent on those procedures, and that just was not really in my budget. So I was really, really, I am really grateful to her that she told me that wasn't the right time for me to do so. Yeah. So it worked much better for me, but it didn't feel that way, and I was really like suffering because of the way I looked. I was fat, I was ugly, I had hair on my face, and I couldn't even do the parting in my favorite place. I couldn't, wear a ponytail because this hair over here would become visible, and the proportions of my face have changed. So I had this longer all of a sudden face, and also faced with a lot of difficulties and a reddish face too. Um, so there were a lot of problems, and I tried to work with this, this new proportion of my face, and whatever worked from the outside, and here it was, hair visible, and it was really problematic for me. Yeah. But with time, I discovered fasting. For me, fasting is probably the most effective thing to look young. And I discovered, Chinese face gymnastic or face massage. So these things are available on YouTube. And I also pasted, Tanaka massage to my article about Pamela if you're curious about specific references to what type of massage and what type of face gymnastics. So you can search for these things, and yoga gymnastics also on my, you can search for these things also on my website. Okay, so I was about to tell you also about the system. So the conversation I had with my colleague from work, Yvette. There was an interesting conversation because we talked about Spanish tourists. Yvette basically told me that she worked as a guide. She also worked as a salesperson. She would sell tickets, and she just came across when I was selling tickets with her friend, and she told me that Spanish guides just come for the summer to the Netherlands, and they don't know too much, and they just tell made up stories to tourists, and the tourists don't even care. So I told you that, well, tourists don't suspect that somebody could just made up stories when being a guide. And she goes like, again, and the tourists, they don't even care if it's real or not, if it's true or not, if the story is true. They just, Spanish guys just tell stories which are not true, and they laugh, he, ha, 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 and then that's it. So I told her once again that, when you go with the guide, you really truly believe and assume that the person just, opened that book or opened that, website to do the research. because nobody assumes that the guide would lie to them. Would you? And Yvette told me that those things are totally not regulated in the Netherlands, and you can just come and work as a guide without having the certificate, the paper you completed, and it's not regulated, and therefore you have a person like her who studied this subject, and you have a person who just came around and just intentionally lies to tourists. So, I started to think about it, and then I thought about Turkish taxi drivers, and I gave her that example, and I told her, anytime I would use a taxi when coming back from Amsterdam, then I would use a Turkish taxi because it was twice cheaper than the regular taxi. And the reason why I did so was because that was my budget at that time. Knowing that was I was spoiling the market. Um, and there was one more example that came to mind. So one of my landlords, Hans, he told me that that Polish people do the same with to the market, because Polish people would just offer rejuvenating, making flats, building flats services, and they would offer those services cheaper than Dutch specialists. Um, and we went further with this, and we also mentioned certificates. I thought about certificates when they were talking about the difference between the Spanish guide and, for example, Yvette. So there is this very very good source of Anna Popławska with Education that I got from Aneta Kobiela and Miss Violetta Brach from the School of Britannia in Tarnów. But and it's great, and I love it, and I use it a lot, and I grew with it a lot. And you get certificates, from that place. So you get a certificate after 1 hour. And there is this CELTA that I also learned from Miss Violetta Brach, that you can do CELTA, and it takes like 4 weeks, and it's pretty much expensive, but you have to teach, and you get feedback, and you give feedback to other people, and so on. So, and you have some tasks to accomplish. So yeah, I started to just bringing up the issue. So you, as a person entering the beautician's office, you just don't know. You don't know when looking at the dentist's office, what does a given certificate mean. You don't know, and it's because it's all is so not standardized. um, and yeah, yeah. So you can check pretty much anything, but that seems like a lot of checking, and which is basically most of the time go to places with the trust that the people who perform the service are actually specialists in what they do, and they develop from time to time too, right? Yeah, so Yvette, I think Yvette was just checking the topic of the system, and what would be included in my book, possibly. She also told me, she asked me about my relationships with my sisters. So with one of them, it was really, really, that relationship based on mimicking and monkeying, and wanting to be like her. And then she started to monkey me, and I started to monkey her, and so on and so on. Yvette also told me that she had a Spanish husband who is an astrologer, and I was like, oh dear, so I've got to get a book from you about astrology. And she was like, no. First she goes like, oh, you want a book about astrology? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, No, they are just old books. You have to go to the library to get one. Yeah. And she was also the one who, when I came across her, I just saw a woman who trained me, and I saw a woman who would write down how much money she had in her desk when she was going back home. So that was great with her. Yeah. So if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. And Piglet is on sale, so you can buy Piglet. You can buy Piglet by clicking on the link in this video. You can find the info also on my website, on my Facebook and Instagram accounts. And if you want to check out my course, Amelia, you can also find the link to the course in the description of the film. So please like, share, and subscribe, and talk to you soon.